All right. I think that's right there. All right. So what we're going to do a little bit tonight is, in the past when we did kind of event stuff, I always try to like bring somebody in, and I've just learned over the last 5 years of pastoring that community and union with distinction and family and that dynamic starts with understanding that there's people with grace gifts sitting right next to you if you're willing to tap into that. There's people with knowledge right beside you. I say this quite often in here. If I'm building a house and I've built 3 of them and they fell down, and the guy next to me has built 15 and they've all stood, then you know what I'm probably going to go do? I'm probably going to go ask the guy who built 15 what he's doing, that I'm not. And so that's just words of wisdom for anything in life, whether that's money, marriage, family, raising kids, whatever it is. If somebody's being successful, we shouldn't be prideful about that. We ought to go, you know what, maybe they know something we don't. Right? And so I want to go find out what they know. And so I asked these guys to come up here tonight, and I'm going to ask them a few questions. And so it's just going to be open-ended because I want this to kind of be a dialogue tonight, because after we get through discussing here, Chris and I, we're not going to speak individually, but we want to converse with you guys. Let y'all ask questions, have a conversation about this stuff, and not just a monologue, but a dialogue. And so that's what tonight is about. And so if you have a question, feel free to ask it. Raise your hand, ask it, and we will. We'll try to address it as best we can. And we don't have all the answers, but we'll try to address it as best we can. And hopefully that'll be a blessing to you guys. All right? All right. Let me get this over here. Pull up my questions. All right. What am I doing? I'm calling somebody. This is my wife's phone. I don't know what I'm doing. Hold on a second. Y'all introduce yourselves for just a second. Introduce yourself. Start with Chris. Go all around.
Hello. Y'all know me. I'm Chris, youth pastor here, and I'm her husband.
And I'm Julie Gibson, as I have. I'm Rhonda Law Minister.
Yeah, I'm TC Live.
I'm David Bruce.
I'm Linda Bruce.
Here it goes. Do we have to speak to a mic?
Yes. Okay. All right. The first question that we have tonight. Everybody introduce yourself? Okay. The first question that we have tonight is, and listen, we won't go around like that. So you guys just, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, but just feel free to just pick up the mic and share if if God lays that on your heart to share. What has kept your marriage healthy? What's the one thing that you would say, you know what, this is what we have done as a married couple to keep our marriage healthy? And what I mean by healthy, you can coexist, but coexisting is not a healthy marriage. A healthy marriage is when there's communication and things like that. So you guys share, what's the one thing over time that you have learned that's kept your marriage healthy?
I do what I'm told. Sometimes. Oh man, in all honesty, I'd say the healthiest parts and the healthiest times of our marriage have come since us knowing God, us coming to know and to believe God. I think before that, it wasn't very healthy. I think we kind of coexisted, like Andrew was talking about. But for me, understanding what love is, true love, real love, how He loves me, how He loves us, getting that, and then going, okay, so that's what I'm supposed to do. That's how I'm supposed to do this. I remember when I first got saved, and I was going through the Bible and I was reading all this stuff, and God just downloading all this stuff on me. I'd go in there, she'd be like in bed, it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd wake her up and just be crying and be like, man, I can't believe I've been so horrible. I didn't realize, that I was supposed to do this, and I was supposed to say this, and I was supposed to be this, and I just didn't know. I mean, I thought I loved her, and I did to whatever extent that I could at that time. But so for me, healthiness is learning love, learning what love is, and then learning how to reciprocate that.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in here real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
The questions that were asked, all, I think, have to apply with it. We're all Christians. That's a given, okay? And granted, that's a big, big factor. What God says to do in your relationship, because He's all about relationship. You transfer that into your relationship, and it's going to work. So I'm not even mentioning that. You did a good job on that. I appreciate that. But when I looked up healthiness, it's not being sick.
Yeah.
Sound, rational thinking, attitude. Okay? And to me, the attitude that two people have within their relationship and how they interact with each other makes a big difference. And over the years, the thing that's kept us healthy is that, yes, but we try different things. We don't let our marriage get foul.
Yeah.
We try different things. We go out on date nights. We spend time with each other. We don't just assume we're husband and wife and just leave it at that. Because what's going to happen is it's going to sour if that happens. So you've got to work at it. It just doesn't happen by itself. For me, that's kind of what we, in my opinion anyway, I don't know if there's one thing. There's several things, the dynamic things I could pinpoint on. But I think spending time and going out on a date nights may seem like a simple little thing. And, oh, yeah, that's so corny. But you know what? That's a big thing. Yeah, because when we got here and we're retired, I said, we need to take one day out of the week and go see the area. We don't know it that well. Let's go spend some time together. You know how hard that is to do? And we're retired, guys. We're retired. We don't work. I mean, we work around the farm, but I'll tell you how much we did it. One time. And so you have to work at it. And that's not an easy thing to do all the time.
What along with what you're saying, I mean, you still pursue your spouse. Still pursue her. I mean,
absolutely.
In both ways, right?
You bet.
It'd be like Merle Haggard going to chase you around the room tonight, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm always looking for ways to impress her or
Right.
Get some attention back from her. You bet. And that works.
Sure.
And I think we do it both ways.
Yeah. That's what, along that line is, let me read this to you guys real fast. How many of y'all ever, like, even in your relationship with God, thought, man, this is a mystery. I wish I could like, almost, God, I wish you could just come down and just like, visually let me see you and speak to me audibly and like just reveal all this stuff to me. But I believe personally that there's a reason that it's a mystery. Because a mystery, my kids love Spy Kids. Have you ever watched the movie Spy Kids? They've even been playing Spy Kids around the church all the time. We're Spy Kids and all this stuff. And they're always trying to discover something because with Spy Kids, there's a mystery. So mystery means there's discovery that's along with it. And so without discovery, there's no pursuit. With no pursuit, it goes stagnant. There's no flow, there's no movement. So I believe the mystery there is because the mystery involves discovery. And God wants us to discover Him and unpack Him and the glory and the mystery, but that also correlates over into our marriage, where we're now, when you get to a point where, well, I know everything there is to know on this thing, it's going to go dead. It's like, well,
one of the other things is, now Linda and I, our kids are grown, so we're on another side of marriage. I had 6 boys and she had 2. So we've been there. And when you have kids, that simple date night is even more difficulty.
Rhonda doesn't know anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys got a house full, and you guys even have a chance to do it at night, you know? But you gotta do it, you gotta find some time to get together and keep that flow, that mystery, that uncovering. Those are the times when you find out more about your spouse than at home when you're doing your daily routines. When you go out and get outside the box, you know, things happen and you start discovering little things, even now. You know, we know each other very well, but we're still picking up on little things here and there.
Sure.
You know, and that's cool. I like that. I need that. I get bored easy. I got that. You know, I need that.
Anybody else, y'all got anything y'all want to share? I'm gonna move on to number 2 if you don't. Y'all good? All right. The second question I asked them was, because I gave them these questions prior, I didn't want to just drop them off. Number 2, what is the number one, Chris?
I just showed her that.
Yeah.
The way I figured out.
Yeah.
Chris said this is the mystery. This is the mystery, right? What is the number one practical life application we can do in our marriages to help them be successful? Like, when you look at it, and we kind of talked a little bit about that, but what do you do, like, when a life applicable thing, because a lot of stuff we've been talking about is theological, seeing God the right way, but I'm talking about where the rubber meets the road, where I actually follow this thing out and I do something that resembles that. What's the number one thing that you have done in your marriage that, like, I'll give you an example. For Amber and I, the number one thing that we have done that's helped us is we have to communicate. We have to, I know that sounds, well, that's kind of cliche-ish, but I'm bad at communicating. I'm really bad at that. And so Chris and I were talking about this the other day, is like, I was actually talking about my dad, but I do the same thing. I can sometimes think something and think that I said it, but I never said it. But I thought it, but I thought I said it. And so communication, does anybody else have that problem? I've done that with text messages, seriously. Like, be like, oh, I texted you back. And they're like, no, you didn't. And I check my text, and I'm like, I didn't text them back. And like, but in my mind, I did the text, like, but I never did it.
I think that's intrinsic to the male species.
I'm
I'm not good at communicating, but I think I am. I feel like I've communicated, but and I haven't communicated, even though I say it, not like you don't even say it. Men and women speak different languages.
Yes.
The same words, but different language with the same words. And, I mean, I get in trouble all the time. There's always rocky moments and sometimes rocky periods, but communication is key. Yes, communication. And being Christ-centered.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're all Christians, and that's basically what you guys were saying.
I looked up that word too. That word says success is accomplishment of an aim or purpose.
For intentionality.
Okay.
You're intentional about something.
My first marriage was not a successful marriage. And the fear, I'll tell you what makes me, the fear of repeating that makes me do things that I normally wouldn't do. But I've learned over the years that it works, so I'm okay with that now. But listening, communication is great, but listening for me, I think, was really listening, taking time to hear, feed it back, make sure that what she said to me, I'm hearing it right, and feed it back to her. Most of the time, it's not right. I process it wrong.
We found out really early in our marriage that there's a big difference between saying, what did you mean by that? And what did you mean by that?
Right. That's how you reciprocate that back.
It's that pink and blue again.
That's right.
That's kind of what I was gonna say is, we were talking about that today, last night or whatever it was. And I said, really is what we need to do is he was talking about, she's talking with pink, he's talking with blue. And really is what we need to do is switch, keep your pink earphones on, but he needs to speak pink and I need to speak blue. And that's one of the things that I am constantly, saying is it's important to know what your spouse's love language is.
Yes.
Because if you know what their love language is, his is touch. I can just do this, and that says love to him. Doesn't say sex, this says love.
Yeah.
And
And to not do that.
it's a withholding of speaking his love language.
Yes.
And mine is acts of service. When you said who really wants their spouse to do it because they should, heck yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Because he should. Because that says I love you. Sweep the
Yep.
floor, yes, I love you. Yes, paint the house. And those things you have to be intentional about.
Yes.
If you know that that is something that they need from you and you withhold it, no matter what it is, it's just speaking what it is that speaks to them.
No, that's really good. My wife's love language, I don't know if y'all have ever got the 5 Love Languages book. It's a really good book to read. And right off the top of my head, acts of service, giving of gifts, physical touch, quality time, and what's the fifth one?
Gifts. Did you say
I
gifts?
said gifts.
For me, my love language
words
is
of
food,
affirmation.
so
Words of affirmation, that's right.
you just keep it up.
Well, see, like Ambra's love language is quality time. That's her love language. That is what, as Chris was talking about, what primes her pump is for me to spend time with her. And I'm not talking about physical time. I'm talking about, let's sit down and watch a movie together. Just being there, talking, conversing, and that is what express that. Mine is gifts, one of the things my girls do all the time, because they're little kids, they're constantly gifting me something. They're always making me something, doing something, and I probably almost have every piece of anything they've ever made for me. And the reason is because they don't realize that's my love language, but that's just what kids do. They love to give. And so they give me that stuff. Well, that's a big deal to me. And so that's how we've had to kind of learn. That's one of those things we've had to be. And I'm glad you brought that up because that kind of refreshes my memory on her because I haven't really thought about that in a while. But that love language book is a legit book to get and read in your marriage because those are real deals. There's a guy named Dwayne Sheriff, and he has a series on marriage. Has several, but one of his series, he compares marriage to a bank account. And your bank account, basically, for your bank account to get full, what do you got to do to it? You got to deposit something in it. But if you withdraw from it, eventually it will go to zero and go into the negative. And so he said, when you work with your spouse, if you're not putting back into them, if you're not depositing back into them, then eventually you will drain them dry. And that's where serving comes in. And serving is not always, it's speaking their love language. It's being intentional to how to speak their love language. That's like, I can do the dishes for Ambra, and honestly, that's not a big deal to her. But if I spend time with her, that's a big deal. And so my act of service to Ambra is not, and I do the dishes, but it's not doing the dishes, it's being, hey, I did the dishes so we can spend some time together. That would be why I did that. And so that's being intentional. I like that, how you brought that up. Intentionality is where that comes in.
After you mentioned the book, if you go into any kind of career or business or anything like that, sport, there's training involved. You have to learn how to do that.
Sure.
And I didn't realize until the first time we went through a very small course on marriage. And it was pretty in-depth, very good. I didn't realize until we did that I didn't know anything. I thought I did. I was following God's rules, but there's some dynamics in the relationships on how to work with your spouse that I didn't know about. So I would recommend for anybody, I don't care if it's 5 love languages or Jimmy Evans or whatever.
Jimmy Evans has some of the best
Yeah,
marriage
you need to
teachers out
educate
there.
yourself on how to have a good marriage.
Yep.
It will pay off huge.
It will.
You know, it'll fill that bucket so full, so quick if you do that. And we did that, and I'm grateful for that. Personally, I think anybody that's gonna think about getting married ought to be required to go to a class like that.
Chris did something last night when he was talking about the man feeling like a king. And he wasn't saying that from an ego, like maniac part of the deal. But if you want your man to run through that wall right there for you, he will. When he is full, he'll run through that wall for you. And it works the opposite way too, men. Your wives will run through that wall right there for you when they are full. And that's how that works. That's the dynamic.
Well, I guess that's fun. I've been thinking, is there one thing that I can put my finger on about what I like or feel, but there's really not, because, I mean, he does all kinds of things, you know, he hugs me, he does dishes sometimes too, but he, you know, he rubs my feet, he rubs my neck, I mean, the spoiling me, but I love that kind of stuff.
Because you love it, it's probably touch.
It's just, well, I don't know though, because even when, you know, it's a week or so, then he's even, you know, done that, it's been something else. It's like, yeah, it's, I feel the love without all that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know that he loves me, and so, I mean, there's just like no doubt or anything.
Yeah.
And it's, so he doesn't have to rub my neck or whatever for me to feel that. Although I like it, it feels good, or my feet or whatever. But I was thinking about him, you know, what I probably do? I'm not sure, because we do like so many different things, because we're like running here and there, but we do so many different things for each other. But I notice, like, so when I do this, I'll just be walking by and like I'll touch his head or something, you know, kind of rub my hands on it. But I do that to my girls too sometimes. I'll just go in there and like pull their hair or something to be aggravating them. It's love taps and stuff like that. Yeah, that's what it is. But yeah. But I guess, you know, it just kind of makes them saying they have this certain thing, and I'm like, I don't really have that certain thing, I don't think. I don't feel like I do, because there's like so many different things. I don't think you're doing a good job. Yeah.
I was gonna say one of the things you talk about practical life application or whatever. Something that's been really cool for Julie and I, and it's always been this way, and I don't even know that we're really intentional about it. It's just the way that it happened is that we've always had separate likes. We have separate hobbies. We have separate things that we've always done, and so like we exist and have lives apart from each other, healthy, happy, fun lives, and at the same time we exist together. There's things that we do together, you know. So it's not everything we do is together, but it's actually really good with us. For instance, from time to time I get into the gym and lifting weights and stuff like that. Well, she didn't really want anything, so that was my thing. And she had the girls, and she did pageants and things like that. And they were always on the go doing beauty pageants. I didn't go. I went and watched, but I wasn't in it to the extreme that she was. You know, we've always had these separate lives and doing separate things, but at the same time, you know, being together and enjoying each other. I think that's kind of.
And date night was really fun then, because we didn't get it very often.
Let me ask you something with that, what you said right there. But you probably knew that she always supported your lifting, to use that for it, and she always knew you supported her pageant. And with understanding that you were, even though you didn't do it together, you were still in union about it.
Well, yeah.
That's what you were talking about earlier about being in union, but being distinct.
Absolutely.
I see that a lot in us.
Yeah.
Well,
I do too.
I didn't have any problem with it at all, just because I know that was something that he made him happy.
Yeah.
And that he enjoyed doing, you know. And just like you said, I had a lot of things that I enjoyed doing, and I loved doing it. And so, you know, he did go every right now and then, and he did help me a few times. I needed some help, so.
She never spotted me in the weight room. Just gonna throw that out.
It's kind of like, when Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. Well, in the marriage, it's if you love me, you speak my language. It's just an automatic.
Yeah.
It's just an automatic.
Yeah.
The discovery of the languages and then speaking it.
And then the many different dialects of that language. All right, let's do the third question. How did you know that this was the person you needed to marry?
I told him.
That's exactly what I was gonna say about her. She told me so.
I knew, like, I just knew.
Was there qualities in him that you was like, that's the qualities I want in my husband?
I had been widowed previously to us meeting, and when I finally got to the point to where I thought, you know what, I think maybe I do want to have a man in my life. And I actually sat down and I journaled a prayer, and I wrote down every attribute that I would want in my future husband. And he was like, check, 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 check.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Before we got married, we would pray together, and we would go to church together. And it may sound corny, but when I proposed to her, it was while we were in prayer. God was included in
That's
my
awesome.
proposal.
Yeah.
And
We left my girls.
yes, it was, when you know, you know. It's just like meeting Christ.
Yeah.
When you got the girl that you're supposed to have, you know.
Yeah, that's good. That's good with that.
Well, ours is a little funny story, but,
How old was Chris first?
Shut up.
and I was 28. Yeah, there's a big difference, but nobody knows that. They always think we're around the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going global now.
Oh, I forgot about that. So, are you a cougar?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
I've been called that many times. No. Not a long time, but yeah, except for by my daughters. It was funny because he was so infatuated with me. And that's not a lie, he was. So, you know, after.
So, like, you're not gonna leave me alone, so I'm not gonna marry you.
But anyway, after like 8 months, no, we were together 8 months when we got married. But it was, I don't even remember what we were doing, but I said, well, you know what? We just need to get married. That's about how it ended. I mean, we got married. So.
I just said yes, ma'am.
How long y'all been married now? 19?
18 years.
18 years?
Yeah.
And it's still yes, ma'am.
19 years.
Still yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Still yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is going to be a little long, I'll try to shorten it. Coming from my first marriage was 21 years, and I got married for all the wrong reasons. I didn't know anything about anything at 24. And it was not a good relationship. It ended badly, and it was, at that time, I wasn't walking with Jesus at all. And so, I started going to church, and God revealed himself to me, and my whole attitude, my heart, everything changed. Now, this was 2 years after my divorce. And I remember having a one-to-one conversation with God, and I was ticked. I was upset, because I felt like I just wasted 21 years. Now, mind you, I had some great boys, and I enjoyed my family, and I loved them to pieces. But what I thought was going to be forever wasn't, and I was severely disappointed.
Yeah.
And I said, "What? This was a waste of time." Well, that's what I thought then. I now know that that wasn't a waste of time. It was part of what he was developing me for. So I said, "All right, I'm not even going to look. You know me. I would love to have a relationship, but I ain't looking. I'm done. I'm gonna be single, but you better make it pretty obvious, 'cause I ain't looking. I'm done. So that's the way I went, and I went to church, and I was doing stuff and serving and everything, and Linda was going to the same church, and we got to know each other a little bit, and I think the first thing I noticed with her was she was driving this 5.0 Mustang Stick. What year was that, 95? And it was the one the highway patrol would use, you know, the hop. Now, if anybody's ever driven that car, they know that that clutch is not a hydraulic clutch. That's a hard, stinking clutch. It's cable. And this woman was driving in sales, doing like 600 miles a week with this car. Wow, that's kind of impressive. But that was just kind of a cool thing. Didn't give it any other thought. But I was on the worship team, and I remember one girl coming up to me and said, you know, you and Linda are probably going to get married. I'm like, what? She ain't even my type. You know, and guys have their types, and women have their types, and, you know, I'm Japanese, and I'll tell you, and I know it's going out there, so don't take offense, but most Japanese men like blondes or black women. That's just the way the culture is. No big deal, and I happen to go on the blonde side. Well, she ain't blonde. So I didn't give it another thought. And then the second girl said, yeah, you two are gonna probably get married. And I thought, these chicks are smoking crack or something. It's like, this isn't happening. But there was a lingering thought in the back of my mind, and I'm open to God's direction. And so, well, anyway, we started having conversations. And one New Year's Eve, we sat and talked for a long time. We had a New Year's Eve celebration in church, and we got to know each other. And I thought, I wonder. And so I prayed about it, and I thought, well, we'll see. So, you know, I asked her out on a date. And brother, let me tell you, after being married for 21 years, I was just nervous as a 13-year-old kid asking somebody out on the first date. I butchered that so bad, and she still went out with me. And anyway, we got to knowing each other, and finally it just revealed itself to me and said, wow, I guess this is it. Well, we're going to find out. And we had known each other maybe 2 months. And so I was convinced. I knew. Yeah. Like, you knew. I knew. You know, it was God directed. So I told her, I said, we're going to get married. And she stepped back and said, what? How do you know? And I said, I think God is telling me this, but we'll see. And I figured, I'm going to push the envelope and see. And we got married. And that was a whole nother story there, but God set my house on fire.
How long has that been?
It's been 18 years now. 18 years. Coming up on it. But God burned my house down so that we could get married. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, that's how I do.
Let me, sorry, this phone keeps messing. The fourth question I've got, we've actually kind of already talked about that. So we're going down to number 5, last question. What's been the biggest adjustment you have had to make in your marriage to make it work? What's the thing you have had to do? What Rhonda was saying about putting on your blue earphones or your pink. What have you had to? Chris talked about in your thinking. What has had to change to make your marriage work? What have you had to see differently?
That I was no longer an individual.
That's good.
Well, we actually talked about this a little bit this evening, that my choices, my thoughts, everything about me, everything that I did no longer was just about me. And I was connected. We were connected with, to become one. And so learning to think like two, think for two, think as two, or even more, you know, with my kids. I mean, we're all connected as a family. Anything I do, say, think, whatever, is going to affect them either good or bad. And so for me, I was a very, very selfish individual for all of my life, you know, up until getting married and coming to know God. And so that's been my biggest adjustment.
Let me ask you this, because I know a little bit more of your story probably than some of people here do. But let's see, you said you've been married 18 years? All right, so you met Jesus, what, about 8 years ago? Was that right? 7, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
And so basically 10 or 12 years of your marriage was not
there's times early on in our marriage where she had my bags packed and closed the door, and I'd been drunk for several days and trying to come back home, and it wasn't. I mean, I worked hard, brought home a paycheck, thought that was love, and thought I was doing my fatherly, my husbandly duties because I made lots of money, worked all the time, and but as far as loving, serving, thinking of somebody else, man, there's very little of that. I didn't get that. I didn't understand that. I had lived for myself up to that point. Now I would do things. I would do things really nice and do really nice things and say really nice things, but there's always like a motive. There's always something attached to the, I was always expecting something out of it. It was never just for the sake of the other person. And so that changed dramatically, I think. Matter of fact, it changed so much when I had my Damascus Road experience. It changed so much that my wife almost left me.
Oh, seriously?
No, she told me one night, she looked me in the eye after I got saved, and I was sitting there with my Bible in my hand. I'd come back into the bedroom to share some awesome revelation that God had just shared with me, and I was like, oh, you got to hear this. And I went to spouting off whatever, and she come out of her closet, and she just had tears in her eyes, and she said, you scared me. She said, you're not the man that I married. She said, I don't think we're going to make it. I don't think that we're going to last. And man, I was devastated. I was just rocked. I'm thinking, hey, I got saved. Everything's supposed to be good. Everything's supposed to be better, right? Here my wife's going to leave me because I love Jesus. And I was just kind of like, come on, God, what kind of deal is that? And I remember going outside and I went around the back of the house and I just kind of slumped down on the porch. I was just booing. I was crying, just big snot bubbles and trying to catch my breath. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? And my wife hates me, and God just impressed upon me. And it was so cool because I don't have any background, in church theology or anything at this point, and just real raw and fresh. And I just remember thinking, wait a minute, God is against divorce. Like, I don't know how I knew that, but it's just like this thought just come over. Like, God, you're not a God of divorce. You're not a God of separation. You're not a God that does that. That's not what you're about. And so I was just like, oh, you're not going to do that. You're not going to let that happen. And I remember, wiping my tears and wiping my snot and, just thinking, okay, I'm just going to trust you. I'm just going to keep on. And I know you'll do with her what you've done with me. And sure enough, it took a little bit more time for Julie, to come in the same direction that God was taking me. And that was part of the struggle early on. But lo and behold, here we are 18 years later and still growing closer and better and stronger and still learning from our mistakes and willing to stand up here and share them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have to say, it was very scary for me because I had actually been going to church way before we got together. And the day that I got baptized, he didn't even go to church. He was asleep in bed at home. So, but it was like, when he gave his life to the Lord, it was all 180%. It was crazy. I've never seen anybody turn around like that. But it was so fast, so hard that he was ready to throw out every television, every daggone movie, CD, everything, and nothing had ever been discussed. It was just like he was ready to do it all, because he thought that's what it was about.
an old man.
Yeah.
Didn't know he was already dead, did you?
Yeah, and the thing about it is you don't have to do all that, and he didn't realize that at the time. And another thing is he wanted me to feel exactly like he was, and I kept trying to explain to him, everybody's not the same. We all feel differently, and we all have different ways, our faith is, we're all going to the same place, but everybody's not going to feel like you do,
Yeah.
And so it was very scary for me, but thankfully we got through all that. I think he calmed down a little bit, not much, but.
Well, what happened? What happened,
But
Chris?
it's very good because I'm very proud of him,
Yep.
where he's come, from what he used to be. And, I wouldn't change that for anything. I'm very proud of, the man he's came to be across especially, so.
Next month will be 5 years since Amber and I moved back here to Antlers and started helping with the church. I come in as associate pastor in October of 2010, and then in March of 11 is when we started being pastors here. But we met at
National Day of Prayer.
National Day of Prayer by the railroad tracks, and the growth that I've seen in Chris in the last 5 years. Then until now is, so much different. But you made a statement a while ago, when you was talking about throwing out the TVs and doing all that stuff, Chris made the comment, I was trying to kill the old man. But he makes that comment, sarcastically, because we know now that the old man was crucified with Christ. He was co-crucified, co-resurrected. We can't kill him. He's already dead. But Chris Smith, last night we're talking about our society and people, just people in general. We have a rubber band reaction to things a lot of times. Let's say that we're in an error, right? And we see the error of that, so we're going to fix it. What happens is we get slingshot into the other ditch, just opposite of that. So we go from one extreme all the way to the other extreme, and we just find ourselves in the opposite ditch of where we were. Pendulum swings, what I call it. You'll be over here, and then you see, I've got to fix that. But what happens in the fixing, you go way over here. And then you find out 5 years later, well, that's an error too. And then what happens is all of a sudden you start seeing this stuff in Jesus, and you realize he doesn't want me in either one of the ditches. He don't want me in a ditch. He wants me to be found in him. And when that happens, that's when peace really takes place. Y'all got anything? Go share.
I think we probably all also keep in mind the concepts of tolerance and acceptance and forgiveness.
That's good.
As much as I love my husband, he's not a perfect person.
No. You just crushed me.
Okay.
I'm crushed.
There was a joke about this little old granny who's been married for decades, and someone said, "Granny, how'd you have a happy marriage that long?" And she said, "Well, I was just told when I was getting married to just make a list of the 10 things he did that irritated me, and those 10 things I would never say to him. I would just let him get away with it, and I would never throw it in his face. Just those 10 things." And she said, "Well, gosh, that's a good idea. What'd you put on your list?" She said, "Well, I never got around to the list. Whenever he irritated me, I just said, he's lucky that's one of 10. Well, on occasion, I have to say, he's lucky that's one of 10. But that's really rare. But the forgiveness, I think, is the thing that I had to really learn to forgive, and not forget, but to just let go,
Yeah.
And that's one thing I have to do. It's been the most self-help on my list.
I want to talk about that for just a second, what you just said, because it might have been me and you talking about this. I find it interesting how religion can really blind people to common sense stuff. And what I mean by that is, how many of you guys know that forgiveness is good whether the other person receives it or not?
Absolutely.
I know people that have went to cemeteries and stood over a grave and said, "I forgive you." And that released them, and that person was dead. But they were dead, they couldn't receive it. So reconciliation wasn't even a possibility, but the forgiveness was for them to release that. So what's interesting is I know people that, just like what you were saying, forgiveness is if you don't have forgiveness in marriage, I promise it's not going to work. Any relationship, it don't matter. Chris and I, there's times where he makes me mad, and I'll tell him. But you know what? If I'm not willing to forgive him or him me, you can't have a relationship on any level. You just can't. And so forgiveness is a core principle to relationality on any level, whether it's marriage, friendship, whatever it is. But what's interesting is we understand that humanly, but then we think God's not going to forgive us unless we go to him and beg him. But then if you let that start dictating you, what'll happen is well, I'm not going to forgive until they ask. You see how deadly that is? And then all of a sudden, you go, man, I think some people have a healthier view about humanity than they do about God. That's kind of scary. But you start seeing that, man, forgiveness is a key component to any relationship. You realize that God is dealing in forgiveness, and that's his business. That's his game. And the reason is because he knows forgiveness is the core to relationality, and he's relational. Because it's the Trinity. Father, Son, Holy, it's relationality. And so I was hoping somebody would go there and talk about forgiveness and grace and mercy and compassion. Because without those are the fundamental truths that everything flows out of. All of our effort, all of that flows out of those truths that I'm building this around. Because if they're not built around those things, then that has to be the foundational truth to the relationship. Because that's the foundational truth to our relationship with God. For God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not counting trespasses against them. Does everybody receive that reconciliation? No. But does that mean that God hasn't forgiven them? No. Because he knows that that's got to be dished out before any relationship can happen. So that's good. Thanks. That's why I was hoping somebody, because I was the one that shared that, because that's a big deal to see. We need to see Papa that way so we can see each other that way. We got to see him that way. But
I was going to say, Ron did ask to repeat the question.
Okay. Sorry, this phone keeps locking up on me, and then I have to. There we go. Okay. Here it is, right here. What's the biggest adjustment you've had to make in your marriage to make it work? Basically, what's the biggest adjustment personally you've had to make to make the relationship work?
For us, it took place about 8 years ago, and TC had deployed to Saudi Arabia. And when he returned, he had several injuries plus PTSD on top of it. So where we before had date night once a week, we was very active, worked out, very, physical, and all of that changed, every bit of it. So for us, I was raised from a very young age, unfortunately, that you use your body to show your love. So when he has pain and multiple surgeries, how do you show your love? And that kind of screws me up a little bit. So we had to navigate our marriage differently. And I think that while, we talked about the whole physical aspect of the marriage and how important that is, if that's all your marriage has, it's not going to last. And that's something we had to readjust our date nights and our whole life to work around the physical and all of that. So while the physical is very important, you've got to have more than that. And we need to learn that.
Good.
When I went through a personality awareness program, there's like 5 different personalities, or it's like 4 different personalities out there. And
You got 5 different.
I don't know which one's coming out. I found out that my personality type is a detriment to me in some things, especially in a relationship. I'm very technical, very head-oriented. I used to wonder why I used to bump into things all the time in my head. That's why. Technical people, engineers, bookkeepers, people like that, they think so much with their head that oftentimes you see them walking with their head down, thinking, and they run into things. And it used to irritate the snot out of me why I would do that, bumping my head all the time. Well, the problem is, when I get in task mode, I frown. my eyebrows come down and people think I'm angry, and I'm not. And oftentimes, people misunderstand me and think that, and I wonder what's going on. So that's one of the things that I've really had to work on. And I still struggle with that because my personality is so strong in that area. Now, I'm aware of it, so that helps.
Yeah.
But along with that, the problems that it causes, Linda hit on it, the forgiveness. If I sense anything, I will question. Something's not right. Did I say something, or you said something to me, and maybe I didn't quite hear what you were saying, but this is what I hear. And we would feed it back, like I said earlier, and if there was a misunderstanding, and I've gone to her and said, you know what, I think I upset you, and I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And I'm not afraid to do that now. I never did it with my first marriage. I didn't understand God's principles. There was no God in my first marriage. That's why it failed, seriously. But Linda and I both were on such an even keel spiritually that I feel like we are very equally yoked. And that's a blessing to both of us. But being able to communicate and ask for forgiveness and the freedom to do it, and know that you're not going to be, you're not going to lash back at you or hold it in reserve to use later for ammunition, that kind of thing. Baggage, it does. We have no baggage. I don't want any baggage. Baggage is a pain in the rear. It really is.
Yeah.
When you have that kind of a marriage where it's open and you trust each other. But that was a big adjustment for me because you don't understand when you've had a bad marriage and 20-some years of this pressure in your brain, it's hard to not just go along with that again. But God changed me.
That's good.
And He made me aware of some things. And so the two of us, and I'm sure it was an adjustment for her too, because she's had previous marriages. And so she, first thought she probably picked up some kind of whack. But, probably still am. It's,
That's one of the 10.
But so yeah, for me, the technical thing, and getting so focused on something that if she tries to penetrate my consciousness, sometimes I cut her off. Because you've just invaded I'm thinking so hard, and then you've invaded my thought, and all of a sudden the first reaction is, I'm irritated.
Yeah. I think that can be a man thing in general too.
And so I don't do it every time, but I try to back up and listen. Even though I know it's going to take me some extra time to get back to where I was before, because I'm just entertaining her now. But I don't want to feel like I'm placating her, and I don't want her to feel that way, so how you deliver that's important. There's a dynamic that goes on there, and it's not easy. It takes practice to do that. But for me, that's even harder because I get so focused on something.
Yeah.
And there's been times I've hurt her feelings because of it. And I know that, and most of the time I'm aware of it, and I go and talk to her about it. But sometimes,
If Julie really wants my full attention, she knows to wait until the commercial. That's all.
Something I did this to Chris yesterday. We're building a barn type thing, metal building for some people south of town, and the welder quit, and so Dad sent me to the house to pick up a battery. So I get to the house, and they had just got there, Chris and Katie. So I'm looking for, and all we got to do is seriously make 4 tack welds, 5 minutes worth of work, and the week is over, right? And the welder quits. So he sends me to the house, and he says, the other battery is sitting on the four-wheeler. So I get there, and Chris is there, and talking about getting focused, I can be one-track mind when I see that. That's what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody else is doing, that's what I gotta get done. And so I get there, and I look at the four-wheeler, and the battery's not there. So I'm going through the back porch, and I'm looking for the battery, and they're waiting, 3 guys. It's 4:30, Friday, and everybody's ready to go home. 5 minutes, work. And I'm looking, and Chris gets in the truck, I can't find it. I get down there, and I called my dad 3 times, he don't answer his phone. And they're a mile down the road. I get down there, I said, I can't find the battery. He said it's on the other side of the four-wheeler, sitting on the foot piece, on the other side. He goes, do you walk her? Yeah, I said, you said it was on it, not sitting on the foot side on the other side of the four-wheeler. So I drive back down there, and I go and I get it, and about the time I load it up, Amber pulls up. Well, she wants to talk about what are we going to do with the kids tonight, because we can't find anybody to watch them. And I give her about 2 seconds, because I was like, I can't talk right now. And so I was like, I gotta go. And I pull up, and Chris is like, she just wants some sugar, man. What's up with this? I was like, there you go.
Wait a second, too, man.
And I'm going, I just look like a complete jerk. Because I'm like,
She literally gets out, and he's back up, she's like coming to the window, like, all happy to see him. She's like, and he's like, I gotta go. And I was like, hey.
she got in my conscience.
I think she was starting to fuck her too. She's like, stop being a fucker. But we've all done it. Nope.
Sure. What you said a while ago, something that Chris has taught me, because he's very intentional about this in our friendship, is when something's up. How many of y'all know when you know something's up, you can feel it?
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about with your spouses, really. I mean, honestly, I can know when I've made my wife. I can know when she's mad at me. She can sit there and deny it all day long, but I know she's mad. It doesn't matter. I know. And then she gets mad at me, and I'm like, would you just tell me the truth? Just tell me what made you mad.
One of my favorite statements is I'll say, what is it? What's wrong? And they'll say nothing, like all my girls, nothing. And it's like, now listen, you just lied to me. It's something. I know it's something. I say, now you may not want to tell me. That's fine. Tell me, yes, something is wrong. I don't want to talk about it. But don't tell me nothing.
And something that he's done in our friendship is he's intentional, being like, hey, dude, you mad? You mad? I mean, seriously. I mean, he just, hey, I make you mad. And I've never really had anybody that does it in a way like he just wants to get out there. And I found that doing that's a healthy thing. That's a good thing, instead of just going and sweep it under the rug. Because what ends up happening is what you said. When you sweep it under the rug, whether you realize it or not, you'll end up using it for ammunition later. That's what ends up happening, and that's not healthy. And the more you can talk about things, that's why the grace and forgiveness, and that's where that whole men are the worst about this. And men and women both do it. It just manifests in two different ways. Insecurity can drive us. And it's the whole, I kind of hit on it last night about they were naked and unashamed in the garden. Being naked in that sense, because I want you to think about something like, one day we're all going to stand before Jesus, right? We're standing. And do you realize that, like, all things are going to be laid bare? There's no more hiding. There's no more crap. There's no more playing the games. No more there's no more fooling nobody, even yourself. Nothing. It's all going to be laid bare. You're going to stand there naked, so to speak. I don't mean physically naked. What I mean is it's all going to be laid bare. All the insecurities, all the hurts, all the unforgiveness, all the everything. And I want you to just think about that for just a second. Because you go, that can be completely like kick the little totem pole right out from under us. And the little insecurities we build our lives on. Because men like to go, I'm not going to let anybody get close to me. I'm not going to let anybody get close to me. I'm not going to. So we walk around with our little egocentric show, and we walk around with stuff, and we ain't going to let nobody, keep everybody at a distance. And we'll even do that to our wives after you get married. We'll even do that. I ain't going to let anybody, because we don't want anybody to know the real us. Because deep down inside, we think if they knew the real us, you wouldn't like me. You wouldn't accept me, and you really wouldn't like the real me. So I'm going to give you the version of me that I think you want. And so we live our life with our little insecurities driving our life. But one day, none of that stuff is going to be able to do that no more, because we're all going to get laid bare, and we're going to go, and he's going to go, this is it right here. This is you. This is everything. And when that happens, I'll go there. Before that, here and now, what happens, and that's why grace is such a big deal, is grace is this idea that God accepts me, doesn't want me to stay messed up, but he accepts me right in the middle of my mess ups, right in the middle of all my insecurities, all my stuff, all of my things that are. How many people in here has had bad stuff happen to them growing up, and that has played a role in what shaped you? There's not a person in here. Something that happened. You would be surprised at how many grown men I've had talk to me about, well, when I was a kid, I got picked on. When I got older, by God, I ain't gonna let that happen no more. So therefore, I walk around with a little chip on my shoulder, and if you even act like you're gonna knock it off, I'm fixing to give you some. So we walk around like that. And we walk around, and guess what's driving us? What happened to us when we were 7? But see, what happens is Jesus comes in, and he's already there, and he's like, you know what? Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we have a conversation about that? Why don't we talk about that hurt? Why don't we talk about that insecurity? Why don't we talk about those things? And why don't we do some healing? Why don't you let me fix some of that stuff that's driving your life? Religion will tell you you have to fix that stuff before you can come to God. Grace tells you you can't fix that stuff without him. That's what grace is. And so what happens is we go, man, how many of you guys want to live a messed up life? I don't. I don't want to live a life that's driven by hurts and deceit and lies. Nobody wants to live that, because all that, you know what that ends in? Destruction. I want to live those things. But what happens, man, is he comes in and those insecurities, and we can, with our marriages, and the reason this correlates is inside of our marriages, and this goes back to that whole Trinitarian understanding of God, is we're union, but we're distinction, is that we get to be completely, the moment you can be vulnerable with your spouse is the moment you'll experience a union like you've never experienced. But if I keep you at an arm's distance, you will never truly experience. You can on paper be one flesh and in theory be one flesh, but you're not experiencing the one flesh. Does that make sense? You're not having that experience of that. It's the same principle. I can be in union with God because of Jesus, but that doesn't mean I'm having a tangible experience of that union. And it's the tangible experience. I posted this, and I'm going to preach on it tomorrow. I posted this on Facebook. It'd be like trying to go, it's like going, believing that without the encounters of Jesus and the Holy Spirit in our life where we experience him, it's like going to sex ed class and expecting to get pregnant. You may learn how it all works, but you're still fruitless. That's what it is. And we go to church, and we do the dance, and we play the role, and we do the stuff, and we go to sex ed class, and we learn about all this stuff, but yet we're fruitless. That's because there's no communion going on. There's never really, the union is not being experienced, and that comes when you're vulnerable. And I'll give you a good example. You know, there's a time when Jesus told the Pharisees this. He says, who do you say John is? John the Baptist? And it says they conspired among themselves and said, we don't know who he is. So he said, because it says, because they knew that if they said he was a prophet, then Jesus would say, why didn't you believe him? Because he said that's the Son of God, right? But if they said he wasn't a prophet, they was afraid of the people because they revered him as a prophet. And because they didn't want to kind of say what they believed, they said, we don't know. You know what Jesus did? He says, I ain't talking to you, and walked off. He did. Yeah, kind of. He turns around and walks off. And the reason is because they was not going to be honest enough to be vulnerable to be corrected. They didn't really want to know. They didn't want to know. My point to that is we're not going to experience communion until we're vulnerable, honest, open, laid bare, naked and unashamed. Okay, God, here I am, all my faults. That's what I loved about what you said a while ago about, I had a ticked off conversation with God. I have those quite often. Because it's our religious side, I can't talk to God like that. You're already hacked off in your heart, and He knows it. You saying it ain't going to make it worse. Everybody, there's not, if Jesus is the Son of God, think about some of the conversations Peter had with Him. You're not going to go to the cross. Don't even be saying stuff like that. Jesus had a real open conversation with him about that. He's like, get behind me. Right? But my point is that you have these vulnerable, when you're laid bare, you're like, here I am, God. All my jacked up, all my mess ups, all my insecurities. You said you love me. Now, what are you going to do with me? What are you going to do with this? And when you get to that point, you realize, man, He can really do some amazing things. He can do some amazing things with us, and all it takes is honest, just vulnerable. But we have to strip away all of that man-made facade and mask and all of that stuff. And you strip that away in your marriage, and the marriage will be healthy too.
Oh, I have
Go ahead.
quite a bit to say. I don't feel like this is on, but I guess it is.
That one's hotter than the other one.
Yeah, that one is. You was talking about things happening when you're little. Nothing really happened to me when I was little like that. I felt like I had a really good family and everything. It was just that I didn't want to listen. I wanted to do my own thing. Is the reason I left home and everything. It didn't start happening to me until the boys got involved.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my mind started changing a little bit, and I started getting a little tougher, but I did still what I wanted to do, and I pretty much treated those boys like most boys treat girls, you know. And I had a lot of boyfriends, went through a lot of boyfriends, and even when I got married, my first marriage was real abusive. He beat me up every single day, tried to kill me a couple times. And even after all that, you know, I went back and I tried to make it work because I didn't want my marriage to be a failure. But I did have to run away in the middle of the night to get away from that, you know. And then I went and did it again, which then he was shot between the eyes and killed, which was Brittany's daddy. And then, you know, then you have lots of trust issues and just a lot of things that go on through your head. And then I met this other guy, and he just like swooned me, thought, you know, he treated her like she was everything, and I just couldn't believe that somebody was going to love my child that was somebody else's, like their own, you know. So we got married. Well, come to find out, he was mean to her, and I just started packing up stuff, and I was like, I'm not doing this, you know. So, and then I found out several other things about him, which that only lasted 8 months because I was not going to let him, you know, treat her like that. And so I left. Well, then Chris came along when she was 5, and he was really good. He played with her before actually he even met me. He met her, you know, and she used to water gat him all the time, but at the apartments. But even when we got together and got married, I constantly had that trust issue, you know, with if he was, you know, I always had that guard up. Well, I'm watching him, even though, you know, we were crazy about each other because I had a child, you know, and I had to think out for her first, you know. So it's like, and I always told him, I just want you to be sure. And I know that I didn't think about it hurting him at the time. But I always told him, I said, I want you to make sure you understand that I chose to have you in my life. I don't need you in my life. Because I had done it for so long, you know, by myself. And and had all these other things that happened to me and made it through. So for years I told him that too, even though we were married. And, you know, I know that had to hurt him so bad to hear that. But the truth of it was later on, you know, when we was talking about all that stuff about him going a little berserk in the "Oh Jesus" thing, even sex was like totally different, because then I was like, it was almost, I felt dirty about it. I didn't think that, I didn't want to do it because it felt like, it was just weird, you know what I mean? And so it took us a little while to get over that. But I mean, finally it became to where, you know, now after everything, I don't feel like that. I mean, I do need him in my life, and I'm thankful for him in my life. I don't know what I'd do without him in my life, but you know, it's completely, totally different from where it started. But that was all because of the things that had happened to me and the relationships that I'd had before and stuff. And of course, you know, God being part of our relationship halfway through, that's where we've gotten to where we are now, and the reason I feel like I do now. Man, I'm thankful too, because it was quite the experiences that we've been through with a lot of that stuff.
The sex is not weird anymore. I quit quoting scripture during, so it's kind of.
He laughed. No, I want to say something. Julie, whether you realize or not, you just deconstructed Western Christianity. Chris was telling me the other day that about how that some of the things you say is so theologically sound, but you don't even realize what that you're saying, because it's just what you've learned through experiencing true relationship. Because the difference is, well, I told him that I chose him, I didn't need him. Do you realize that we think God just chose us just because he's. You know that the Bible says we are his portion? His portion. I'm not saying God is incomplete, because this is actually a good teaching point. Why do you think we long for marriage? Why do you think we long for marriage? Have you ever thought about that? Why do people want to get married? Even after 3 or 4 or 5 marriages, people still get married. Why is that? Or even date, or even, there's something in us that longs for that, is there not? I mean, even if you can't put a theological answer to that, obviously there's something, every culture has it. Why? Because we are created by a relational God for relationship. That is in us to have that. Friendship, community, that is just in us to have that. And so what ends up happening is, God being the Trinitarian God that he is, he's always had relationship. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So the reason he is complete is because he has relationality. See, when you get married, that is something that completes in your life, because you were created to have relationship. You were created for that, because you're created in his image as relational. So when we crave that, we long for that. And I promise you, why is it that when we get offended, what's the first thing that we like to do? We like to isolate. We want to run away from that. But offense is what's driving that. When we forgive, what does that do? It reconciles, draws us back into a relationship. And so inside, when he created us, because we come out of him, we always existed in him. When he brought us and created us out of him and exist in him, then there's a part of him that longs for that relationship. He's not just going, God, and I'm just, and I choose you, and I damn you. That's Western Christianity. No, he longs. Right before we started, I had Peyton in my arms tonight, and the song was playing, she was bouncing. And sometimes we lose sight of the fact of God's heart towards people who won't receive that reconciliation. God is not sitting up there going, just, and they're getting what they deserve. Dude, I'm telling you, his heart rips in half for people that won't receive that reconciliation. And I'm sitting there, I'm holding Peyton, and Papa dropped this on my heart and bouncing her, and she's looking at me, she's smiling, she's hugging. And he goes, how would you feel if she got older and got really mad at you and said, I ain't never speaking to you again? I could feel, I felt that. And he's like, how do you think I feel? How do you think I feel? Why the church sits back and they're like, you know what, them filthy sinners out there. And we think, yeah, they're getting what they deserve. He's like, my heart is ripping in half because they won't hug me back. They won't participate. They won't. I'm sitting here going, hey, I got everything you want. Look at me. I'm smiling at you. I hugged you. I'm in you, all that stuff. And then when he showed me that, I was just like, man, that's the heart of God towards humanity. Is he sees these people and he's just like, And like what you said, it's not this, I choose you, I need you, I want you, I desire you. And when you see that, you see that this thing is not just some transactional justice thing that God's got going on. This whole thing is this love of God being poured out on us, and it's relational. And when you see that, you're like, man, this is a way bigger deal than just God up there being God and like Zeus dropping lightning bolts on some people. That's the way I think of it. I was like most people see God as like this big old, like big muscled up guy with a big beard with lightning bolts just waiting for somebody to come by so he can jack him up.
I will tell you, I will be very disappointed if God isn't like Jack Simon.
I'm talking about the lightning bolts, Chris. Lightning bolts. Y'all give these guys a hand tonight.
Yeah, guys, thanks.
Before we wrap up tonight,
No.
Before we wrap up tonight, y'all have any questions? Y'all have any questions? Y'all have any questions y'all want to talk about? Anybody? Anybody got any questions? Anything they want to say? Nobody? You got anything you want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple things. Well, first of all, talking about kids, man, he was sitting there talking about children and how God's in us and we're in Him. And
Yeah.
isn't it crazy how when you're holding your child, you're actually in your child? Like, put that in your pipe and smoke it for a minute.
Right.
It's the Trinity. We're sitting there talking about the Trinity taking place in marriage. But yet, when I have a kid, just like Papa is in me, and there's nothing that kid can do about it. I'm in you. The same annoying faces that I make that annoys my wife, my boys make, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you can't change it. It's in there. It's literally wrapped up in their DNA.
You cannot rip it out of them.
Cannot, whether they know it or not. I'm in you, man. That's it. That's all it is. Something to think about. You guys were talking about something, and all I could keep thinking about was John B. Gottman. Now, this guy, do you know who that is? Okay, well, this guy, he's the only guy that has ever actually got marriage under a microscope, literally, and has solid data to back up everything that he says, which is funny because a lot of what he says messes up most of the major psychologists' thinking as it pertains to marriage, because he's like, you have no data to go off of. He literally has this deal called a love apartment, and they've spent years and years, I think 20 years researching this, and they bring in married couples, and you're talking just tons of couples, and he can sit down with a couple in a matter of like 10 minutes, he can predict divorce rate with a 91% success rate. And he's been doing that for years now too. Well, do you guys, everybody's heard of like an IQ, right? Okay, so there's this other thing they've been finding in the business world, which is the sector that I'm in the most, and that is what they have found is that emotional intelligence, emotional IQ, is much more important than how high you can score on the test with just your head knowledge, as it pertains to overall success.
Explain to them emotional IQ.
So emotional intelligence is it's sort of like it sounds. It's your ability to take things in, how you perceive self, how you perceive others, how you intake data. So the way our brains work on a physical sense, information enters, like my wife says, you're an idiot. Huh? It comes in, well, it goes through one part of my brain, which is where my emotions sit, and then it goes to the frontal cortex, which is logic, but most of us react before we ever let it get into here and we think about it, which was what you were talking about a minute ago. And now John B. Gottman, he's done so much research, and he says that most marriages, the ones that make it, they've developed or came to the marriage with a high sense of emotional IQ, meaning they don't just react. They're not reactionary. They sit back and they process before they say what they're going to say to their spouse. They don't carry around negative feelings for very long. They enter, they get upset, they're frustrated, they solve it quick. Then that goes into the Bible, and that talks about don't let your sun go down. Don't let the sun go down in your anger, right? Well, then that also ties right into, well, when does Satan speak to you? If I'm mad at my wife or my spouse or anybody, it's like when you lay down, you go to rest, and you go to, that's when it's like, yeah, they don't like you. They're right? I mean, is that not whenever you think, if you go to bed with negative feelings or thoughts toward your spouse, anybody really, I mean, whatever it may, if you had a bad day, if you don't go to bed knowing, hey, this is good.
You gotta let that go.
I mean, and they made a great movie called Frozen, and it's etched into our brains forever now. Let it go. I'm not going to sing it, but I will. But I hear that. You got girls. I don't have to. Thank goodness. But even though I don't have girls, it's etched into my brain, and you'd be amazed at how many times things are going on with me and my wife, and I just start to hear that little Elsa. Go.
It's funny you know the names.
I know that one. Is Elsa the one that sings? Is that the Frozen?
Don't try to play boy.
I'm not.
I know you.
I really don't. I've seen it, but I don't know the characters. Come out here, Katie.
It's Elsa.
Elsa sings it? Okay, so Elsa.
You did that to begin with.
So, I don't know the other. Throw me off here, Andrew. So, the emotional intelligence is so important. So, you've got to think, am I carrying negativity around towards my spouse? And if I am, I got to let it go. Just let it go. It does nothing. You're talking about forgiveness. That plays right into it. And then also in an argument. Another thing he debunks, because I don't want anybody to feel bad here, he debunks the thought that people who don't argue, they have better marriages. He's like, it's actually almost the opposite. He goes, we've got couples who've been happily married for 40 years that come into our apartment and they have scream matches. And believe it or not, he's like, they're more happily married, and he's like, all the other indicators, like the way they process stuff out. He goes, some people are just more passionate. He's like, more often than not, the people who never talk about anything, and it just seems like on the surface.
They just coexist.
They're just coexisting, and then it's like one day there's divorce papers on the breakfast table, and nobody knows why. And it's because they've never brought. So I guess what I'm saying is we all have our different personalities. We have this discovery, but if you're Italian, you're hot-blooded, and there's just some, and you get frustrated and fired up. Don't feel like it's the end of the world for your marriage. Just keep working on it, developing it, and working on that emotional intelligence. And one other thing when it comes to fighting, because we were sitting here talking, and I was getting these how-tos. They kept coming to me, and I don't know if these are helping anybody who it's for, but it was just downloading. Another one was when you argue. He says that couples who never divorce all have this one thing in common, and I forget the technical term he gives it, but suppose we're arguing and we're going and we're having at it, that these couples have a switch factor, where if for some couples it's a look, and they'll just sort of like someone will start laughing at each other in the middle of the argument, or somebody will say something that's humorous or just off the wall, just ridiculous. And so, like Katie, she'll be hot. I mean, I'm talking hot, like mad, and I'll just start schmoozing her. Like I'll be like, oh, and she's like, don't patronize me, and I'll like, come here, and I'll wear it down most of the time. Like I'll just
sometimes she punches you.
Yeah, I get hit. That's not a joke. I get it. And so there's a mechanism of this. You guys have been married, you know what I'm talking about? Like, you're just, and then just a smart aleck remark, and you're both like, oh my God, like, what? I'm still mad at you. I'm so mad at you, but I'm laughing. And it just sort of, he said, every couple, and remember, this is 20 years of actual data. Couples who argue and they fight and have things going on, they have this little mechanism. And he's like, for some, it's a look. For some, it's a remark or like an inside joke that they'll just pop on, and it defuses it. Defuses the situation to at least where they can laugh, separate for a little bit, come back and talk about it.
That's good.
And so
I wanted to share something of what you said about emotional IQ, because what you were saying, if you broke down, and I've told Chris this, if you broke down over the last 3 years, every sermon that I have spoke here, no matter what we've titled it, no matter what direction, everything I speak on is identity. Everything. Everything boils down to identity. And the reason is because what he was saying about emotional IQ. The Bible says that you got to love your neighbor as yourself. Right? Didn't Jesus say that, right? You got to love your neighbor as yourself. Now listen, there's two kinds of stuff. There's always two spectrums that the world has to offer on this stuff. And one is the, for lack of better words, sinful side. The other one is the religious side. But they're both digits, all right? And they're both, to put a Christian term to it, they're both the flesh, okay? Now, self-love can be, look at me, and arrogance and pride, and look at how amazing I am, right? So that would be how what's the word? Ego-centered, egomaniac, right? Narcissism. Look at me, look at how amazing I am. Well, they would think that's self-love. Well, we know that that's not good self-love, because when you're narcissistic, does that come out good towards the other people you're relating with? No, it makes them serve you. But then the religious answer to that, you was talking about last night how what God has, the world has a counterfeit for it. There's actually three of them. All right? There's what God has, there's what the counterfeit that the world has, but there's the counterfeit that religion throws out there. All right? So you have the counterfeit that religion tries to say this is what it is. The world's saying this is what it is, and God's like, no, this is what it is in Jesus. And what I mean by that is self-love. The world would say over here in this dish, look at me, narcissism. Religion offers you the exact opposite of that. Oh my gosh, I'm just such a bad person. Man, I'm just a piece of crap. I'm scum of the earth. And then we walk around and we're like, how are you doing today? You know, it wasn't for the grace of God. It wasn't for the grace of God. Man, you know what? You know, and I put on my sackcloth and ashes, and I'm like, man, but do you know what those people are really feeling inside of themselves? Really good about themselves. That's what they feel about themselves. They want you to think they are so godly, so holy. And so the poorer you are, the more godly you are. And those rich people are not godly because they must have made their money by, cheating somebody out of it. And you know what? They shouldn't wear those clothes, or they shouldn't listen to that music. And you know what? I opened their fridge and they had beer in it. Mine don't have no beer in it. So I'm better than those people. That's the attitude. That's religion's counterfeit to the narcissism. All right? But both of those are the flesh. All right? And so what happens is grace comes along, and you know what? Neither one of those people have healthy relationships. They don't. And what's interesting about it, they both lead to the same place. They both lead to loneliness. Because religious people, they don't have community. You know why? Because they feel better than everybody else. And nobody's good enough to hang out with them. Narcissistic people who are all about themselves in this realm, they don't let anybody hang out with them because I'm better than everybody else. And because I am, you know what, you don't measure up either. It's just the same issue, just two ends of the spectrum. But see, where grace comes in, and this is why identity is so important. 2 Corinthians 3 says that in the face of Jesus, that we go from glory to glory, and we're changed into his image. So when we see him face to face, he goes, you know what? The self-righteous is not you. The narcissistic is not you. This is you. And you see that, and it blows the doors off, and your emotional IQ goes through the roof because you're like, oh my gosh, look at who I am. Look at who I am. Man, I am lovely. I am whole. Man, look at how amazing I am. Not in a narcissistic way, but look at what Papa thinks about me. I love people how I love myself. So now, and I shared a little bit of this. Men, y'all listen to what I'm about to say. Psychiatrists, scientific data proves this, that men get to speak identity into their kids. The mamas don't, the fathers do. Father speaks identity. The father is the one who gets to define their kids. They're the one who carries the weight. When they speak it, fathers, when they speak things over their kids, it hammers because they carry the authority. That's just the way God created that thing. Why do you think we're supposed to know him as Father? He speaks identity into us. So when he speaks it into us, it carries the weight of the cosmos. So when he tells you you're not an addict, and you hear that, and you see that, and you believe that, you'll walk out of addiction like that thing never had you. People, well, that's too simple. That's the gospel.
So good.
That's right. That's the whole. It's a family dynamic. So when Papa speaks it to you, your emotional IQ goes through the roof. And listen, it goes back to that love bank thing. If I am full, I won't look for you to fill me up. So I am not looking to take anything from you because I don't need you. I want you. I want your relationship. Does that make sense? I've been wanting to speak this for a while. I'd love to do a sermon on it. I'm not saying that we don't need God. I'm throwing my disclaimer out there. Do you understand what I'm saying? We need God. But listen, the relationship cannot be based off of need. It cannot. And the reason, and this is why you see people, Jesus talked about 4 grounds in the parable. Ones that fell on the wayside, rocky soil, thorny soil, and then good soil. And the 3rd ground he talks about and explains 2 times. And any time in the Bible when it mentions it twice, he's going, listen to what I'm saying. There's a point to this. The 3rd ground was the thorny soil. All right? It says the seed went down and started bearing fruit. And the thorns wrapped around it and choked it out. Right? Y'all know what I'm talking about? All right? See, what happens when our relationship with Papa is need-based only, and we need him. You understand what I'm saying? We need him. But when it's need-based only, what happens when that need is gone? Thorns will choke it out. See, what happens is my marriage is a wreck. Man, I'm about to get divorced. Sunday morning, tell me about Jesus. Tell me about Jesus. Tell me about Jesus. And all of a sudden, the marriage starts getting kind of put back together. And then it's like, it's, yeah, you know, it's about time to get out of here. You know what? See, the cares of the world choke it out because you saw Jesus as a need, as somebody who, I need him. And you hear this all the time out of religious. You need Jesus, you need Jesus, you need Jesus. Well, listen, if it's all based off of need, then all I'm ever doing is taking out of this relationship. taken from it, I'm taken from it, I'm taken from it, I'm taken from it, I'm taken from it. And so what ends up happening is you see people that when I look at my wife, I need her in my life. But the beauty about this is that she doesn't stay with me because I make her. She stays with me because she wants to be there. And so when you look at the people, what's interesting, Jesus looked at the 5,000 he had fed, and he's like, the only reason you guys are here is because I feed you. That's what he told them. But when he said, you got to drink my blood and eat my flesh, do you know how many was left? Only 12. Everybody else was out. And then when they came and got him in Gethsemane, guess how many showed up at the cross? Out of the 12 disciples, how many showed up at the cross? There was Mary, his mama, Mary, a whore, and John. What's interesting is John, I wish you could hear him. John wasn't there because he needed him. John was there because he loved him. Go read the book of John. Go read 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. All them other meatheads were out. John came back. Why? Because the beauty of Jesus is what he's seen. See, that's what I'm trying to get you guys to see, is the beauty of him. Because if you'll see the beauty of him, you'll run through that wall for him. It's not about need, it's about beauty. So when you go read about the martyrs, and you go read about all of those people, they saw the beauty of Christ. When they saw the cruciform, Jesus on the cross pouring out his love upon humanity, that's what they were in awe of. And it was a complete love affair with the God of the cosmos and his reconciliational love and forgiveness and goodness and grace that was captivated by that. You fall in love with this person and this dynamic, and you start seeing who you are, and you start seeing, man, you mean that's the real me. You mean that's who I am. I'm not broken. You mean I don't have to hold on to that? And all of a sudden you're like, and Romans 5:2 makes a whole lot of sense to you, that by faith we have our introduction into this grace in which we stand. And I stand here going, you know what, I can hold my head up high, my shoulders back, come boldly before the throne of God because of who Jesus is. And you're like, whoa, that's a big deal. And then you go, I need Jesus. It's kind of like, I don't even begin to even, like, I don't even touch the tip of the iceberg. I want him. I want God. I want that relationship. So now it becomes from a need to a desire, and you're like, man. And that's the reason you have, that's the gospel that works in the middle of Syria. That's the gospel that works in the middle of third world countries. That's the gospel that works anywhere you go with it. It's the person of Jesus. And when that happens, you can have healthy relationships with other people because you are full. You have ate of the body of Christ. You have drank his blood. And what I mean, you are partaking of the person of Jesus and who he is and everything he means. And then you're full. And that's why you can have healthy relationships. And I'm loving my neighbor as I love myself. And I can only love myself because God tells me I'm worthy. Does that make sense? Identity. If you never get that, you'll never be able to love and have healthy relationships with God or each other. That's why it's so important.
Hey, Amber, I was going to say something. It's crazy how you can get around a big rowdy bunch and feel more comfortable than sometimes in the church house.
Sure.
Just like you said about like religion, because we constantly like, I've done it to myself. I gotta be perfect. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. To where I'm walking around and all these people are laughing that aren't even Christians, and I'm sitting here like condemning them, everything they do because I think the religion, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how you were saying like when you look in someone's fridge and they got beer in there, and you're like, well, I don't have beer in my house. Basically, all you're saying is I'm better than you, and that's
Sure.
not who Jesus is.
Right.
It's crazy that you said that. I don't know.
You find your identity in what you're not.
Yeah.
Not what you are.
Yeah.
That emotional IQ you're talking about, Chris, I think that's something that we've developed, and I'm not bragging, it's just something that's developed between two of us. And I know you're probably nuts here, but in the 18 years we've been together, we haven't had fights.
Yeah.
We've had disagreements, we haven't had fights. And I think one of the reasons, or the reason, is because we're sensitive to that, and we know where to stop.
Yeah.
You know, we just do. And there was one time, I think I can remember, where I got angry, and I knew it was going on, and I said, I gotta stop. I gotta leave.
Yeah.
You know, we don't escalate it to the point where there's damage.
Yeah.
You know, it just works, but it takes time to learn that.
It does.
Yeah.
One good example is identity. They're talking about John. And just reminding me of the scripture that I read. You know, you see all these different great acts of John, and you only I'll to get understanding of that in Christ. I can't remember exactly which one of these, but one of the books that John wrote, and like in his does, he said, I'm John, whom Jesus loved.
Right.
I understood that he was loved of Jesus, and he understood that he was so bad.
Yeah. Some scholars believe John was as young as 12 when he walked with Jesus. They believe all of them, a lot of scholars believe all of the disciples, but Peter was under 20 years old. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, they weren't in Texas.
Well, and that would make sense why John, 60 years after the ascension, was still alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got anything else?
No, not unless.
Y'all got any questions? I know it's kind of late, but I'm glad. I like the discussion. I appreciate you guys sharing tonight from y'all's marriages, and come on, kill this.